Our speaker, David Keel, has been a valued member of our church for many years, and he currently serves as facilitator of our spiritual studies class, which meets every Sunday morning. He began as a Presbyterian and then lodged long as an Episcopalian. As a devoted student of religion, he completed a 4-year theological study program sponsored by the School of Theology at the University of the South. His enduring interest was sparked by a spiritual awakening, which is described in his book, Pathways to Awareness. Please join me in welcoming David to our pulpit this morning.
That was kind of an interesting song. Our trials aren't over yet, though. So we've got to keep going. Today I'm going to discuss oneness at the request of Peter Racine. I didn't ask for this topic. Peter did not explain to me why he wanted me to talk about oneness. Perhaps his next talk will be about two-ness. My task is to explain intellectually something that cannot be explained. It has to be experienced. So here it goes. First off, I don't even like the word oneness because it's a metaphor and a noun. I prefer an action word like love or connecting, just like when I was talking to the children. The spiritual journey is the most written about, talked about, subject in history, if you think about it. Where there is smoke, you might expect there to be some fire, or at least something worth exploring. St. Augustine wrote, "Men go abroad to wonder at the heights of the mountains, at the huge waves of the sea, at the circular motions of the stars, and yet they pass by themselves without even wondering." I have been exploring this topic in different ways, but for the last 20 years, it's amazing, at UUCJ in our 9:30 a.m. spiritual studies class, a class which includes many skeptics. Even some of the avowed atheists and agnostics find value in discussing spirituality on Sunday mornings. Go figure. You do not need to be a mystic to appreciate how we are connected to community, to our environment, to our society, and to the cosmos. The problem is that love for all is, that is oneness, is not an intellectual process. If you haven't had the experience, or if you've had the experience and dismissed it as insignificant, then it's difficult for you to identify with the oneness, or another word for it is unconditional love, or the peace that passes understanding. There's a Hindu saying, love says, I'm everything. Wisdom and intellect says, I'm nothing. Between the two, my life flows. So, if you are identifying totally with your reasoning intellect, you may miss the point of oneness. The problem with the secular humanist atheist view from a oneness perspective, I'm not saying there's a problem, I'm just saying from a oneness perspective, is that they believe that there's nothing to connect to. The agnostics believe if there is something larger to connect to, they cannot know what it is. And there's no way that they can get any directionality from it. Most skeptics have an existentialist understanding of life, which means they make their own meaning. The oneness involves an experience which cannot be denied by those who've had the experience. As Albert Einstein said, the intuitive mind is a sacred gift. The rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society which honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. The mystics, I didn't say that, Albert said that. So, and I like quotes because then I might say something and say, well, okay, but if somebody else says it, then it validates it to some degree. The mystic says there is something larger than our ego to which we are connected. There is a sense of coming home, and there is meaning found in oneness over and above the meaning we make for ourselves. But I can't tell you what it is because it's not something that can be verbalized. Lao Tzu, everybody knows Lao Tzu, right? From China, writes in the Tao Te Ching, the Tao, which he's talking about oneness, the way, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The mystic says the sense of oneness can provide a directionality and a meaning to one's life. Once you've had the experience, you can't explain to someone who hasn't had it. Many people describe it as an alternative state of consciousness beyond time and space. The great philosopher George Carlin said, "Those who dance are considered insane by those who cannot hear the music." People have spent lifetimes trying to understand the enlightened state of oneness, and I only have 30 minutes to try to explain it to you. The best way for me to help you have a sense of what all the fuss is about is to direct you to some meditative experiences. I'm going to lead you through a Buddhist Tonglen meditation. Tonglen is a Sanskrit word meaning giving and taking. We're going to do three, don't get too concerned, 3 1-minute meditations to help bring you to a sense of unconditional love and connection. Kabir, an Indian mystic, said, "I glimpsed it for 15 seconds and I became a servant for life." I don't know if that's going to happen to you, but we'll try. He also said, "It's the intensity of the longing that does all the work." So, the first meditation is to, now, traditional the first meditation is traditional Tonglen, and then I'm going to modify it, because you can do it any way you want. The first meditation is to breathe in life with all its issues. We know there are a lot of issues. Your pain, your fear, your suffering, plus the pain, suffering, and fear of others that comes in, and then we breathe out unconditional love, our connection to it, our oneness. So we're going to do that for a minute. Everybody, close your eyes, put your feet on the floor, please, and relax. So breathe in and breathe out. No, that wasn't so bad, was it? I can be in a crowd. I don't know if this happened to you, but I can be in a crowd and I can feel like I'm isolated. It's just me and everybody around me is different. Or I can change my view and say I'm connected to everybody, and it's a completely different feeling. And I'm the one that created that. And it's my choice, unless somebody steps on my toe. So the second breath, the second meditation, is to breathe in the love of friends, family, and people in this room, and breathe out unconditional love to them. In other words, breathe in your love for the community and breathe out your love to them. There's a word called pronoia. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's the opposite of paranoia. Pronoia means everything in the universe is conspiring to bring me enlightenment. So the third meditation, we will breathe in universal love and oneness, and we will breathe out universal love and oneness. Now, I could go on and do this all day long, but I guess three's enough. But what I would like for you to do is just take a couple of minutes, get in groups of around 3, and just discuss if the good, bad, whatever you felt about this exercise and oneness and love, unconditional love. If you don't mind, in groups of around 3.
pencil.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a pencil on there. I don't know.
All right. I have a short announcement that I'll tell Penny.
You know, Peter does this, and he has people go into their discussions, and I said, well, Peter, how long should I do it? And he says, well, you know, after a while they'll start to wind down, and then you do it. Well, I'm sorry, you guys did not wind down, so I just thought I'd go on, and we could stop there, candidly, for oneness, but I will go on and talk a little bit more. Peter discussed, if you remember, I don't know how many were here, about Albert Camus in his talk on, I thought it was syphilis when he first put it out, but Sisyphus, who when I first looked at it, you know, I'm kind of a little dyslexic, and I don't know, why was he doing that? But Sisyphus was, that's who the Greek gods required to continuously roll the rock up a hill, only to have it roll down again and again forever. Camus, in my opinion, has one of the most sophisticated secular philosophies concerning the intellectual understanding of life. It was just coincidence that Peter related to him. Camus said since this was Sisyphus's life, he should embrace his fate and make the best of it. Camus equates Sisyphus's plight to the plight of all humanity, which he called absurdism. The absurdist life is without mystical meaning. If you think about it, our intellectual understanding is absurd. Science says we come from nothing. The Big Bang just happened. Then we're born out of nothing into a world for a short period of time, and then ultimately back into nothing. This is the state of our condition. Camus says that there are three reactions to this absurd situation. Number one is to commit suicide. Since it's all meaningless anyway, so why bother? Obviously, nobody in this room has taken that option, and neither did Camus. The second option is the existentialist view, which a lot of people in this room have done, and that's to make sense of life. But from Camus' standpoint, even though you're making sense of life, there is no discernible meaning. I can make the meaning, but it's really meaningless meaning. So Camus basically says, understanding making meaning in my life is actually meaningless. Exercise in futility. Even the Bible states it in Ecclesiastes 1:1, utter futility, all is futility. The third option Camus decided was to just embrace his meaningless life as best he could, like Sisyphus, and enjoy it. Sit back and enjoy it. Camus did not offer a fourth mystical option because he was not a mystic. To me, the height of human understanding is to understand you don't understand and will never understand. The mystic is comfortable with not intellectually understanding. Wisdom is knowing the limitations of our knowledge. When Socrates was asked why the oracle of Delphi said he was the wisest man in Athens, Socrates replied, because I'm the only man in Athens that knows he doesn't know. If you read his dialogues, that's what it's all about. This guy thinks he knows what truth is. This guy thinks he knows what justice is. And his dialogues basically show the people that they don't know what they're talking about. As Leo Tolstoy wrote, the only thing that we can know is that we know nothing, and that is the highest flight of human reason. If you have a mystical experience of love and of being connected to everything and everyone, you probably will not just sit in a cave and meditate. Seems like some people do, but you may feel the need to take action to protect others as well as the environment because you realize how connected you are. You cannot hate others who are different and have a different view than you. Maybe I should say that again. You cannot hate others who are different or have different views than you. From a oneness perspective, you cannot pick and choose. There are no differences on a spiritual level. We are one in the Spirit, we are all holy. According to the Buddhist, the only difference between Buddha and Hitler was awareness. Had Hitler been more aware, he could have never done what he did. You can go with the Buddhist or not. Einstein said there are two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. This does not mean we just go along to get along. After all, the story of Jesus was about a man who saw injustice, remained true to his convictions, and even though he knew he would be tortured and killed, he did what he thought was right anyway. We live our lives not in a state of oneness, but in a state of day-to-day ordinariness. If you see life in terms of the divine versus not divine, that is a dualistic mind game. This is why spiritual ideas are always paradoxical. Ideas of separation come from duality, and spirit comes from oneness. All things are one, therefore all things are true, which leads to the spiritual paradox. As Suzuki Roshi said, everything is perfect, but there's always room for improvement. Another spiritual paradox was Gandhi's statement, everything we do is insignificant. It's just very significant that we do those things. Spiritual paradoxical statements are called koans, which are intended to have us go beyond our reasoning mind. If there's only the one, then there's no duality. And what do you do with that? The oneness does not see the differences. Let's face it, from a dual mind perspective, we are all insignificant. We are one person in a world of 8 billion people on one of over 1 trillion planets in our galaxy. We are one of over and we are in one of over 1 trillion galaxies. We live for a cosmic nanosecond. From a rational scientific standpoint, we could not be more unimportant. Science says the universe comes from nothing, yet somehow we have the hubris to think that we can reason out our existence with the limited amount of information available to us. Given our hat size and our weight, we can figure out what life's all about. From a mystical standpoint, if you imagine yourself as anything other than the one, then that's an illusion. It comes down to a case of mistaken identity. The only way to think that you're not one is to use your reasoning mind. You can identify with the illusion or you can identify with reality. The one doesn't care. You can imagine yourself out of reality, but you can't actually put yourself out of reality. Again, reality of oneness is an experience. It is not a mental process. A problem is that even the mystical experience can be interpreted with our own thinking. There are people who have had mystical experiences and come back and are still asses. So it doesn't change you. You still come back to who you are and your culture. There are some people who have had mystical experiences and has changed their lives 180 degrees. As if you try to define truth versus non-truth, you are immediately not identifying with oneness. There is but one spiritual truth, and there is nothing outside the truth. When you think of truth versus non-truth, you're identifying with the illusion. Once you realize the perspective of oneness, then all these other illusions fall away into nothing, and you're left with just oneness. Oneness is about embracing the truth of all things. When we fail at all of our attempts to be other than the truth, we can then stop trying and stop not trying. We just stop without even understanding. When we fail at every attempt to find truth, we can surrender to oneness and end our searching. We are finally not asserting, or denying anything. You are not striving to understand or to not understand. We just are, which puts us in a place of total listening, being totally available, and totally identified with awareness. In the place of total availability, you can come out of your trance and actually experience the one without having to understand it. Awakening to oneness can answer the existentialist questions like, what is life? Who am I? What is God? And still, we have to live our lives on a day-to-day basis, which is not easy. I think it's worth the effort. For me, it's the only game in town. The mountain climber, René Dumont, wrote, talking about oneness, but he's talking about climbing to the top of the mountain, you cannot stay on the summit forever. You have to come down again. One climbs and one sees. One descends and one sees no longer. But one has seen. There is an art of conducting oneself by the memory of what one saw higher up. When one no longer sees, one can still know. Now this know is not the understanding know. This is a knowingness of the oneness. The art of conducting oneself from the universal connection requires a total commitment of your being. You may ask, how do I find enlightenment? I suggest you start with daily activities such as meditation, reading, writing, joining a group of like-minded seekers, etc. I'll leave you with this final quote from Suzuki Roshi. He said, "You cannot make a date with enlightenment. Gaining enlightenment is an accident. Spiritual practice simply makes us accident-prone." Thank you.